Welcome back, casual gardeners. Leaf miners are one of my least favorite pests. In my last garden, they wiped out every single beet plant and cost me my entire beet harvest one season. A bad infestation can leave you feeling frustrated and just helpless. So what are leaf miners? This is a pest that we've classified not by, what is it related to, but really instead by what is its larval feeding habit. So there are many kinds of leaf miners, and all that they have in common is that their larval stage burrows around inside a leaf until it comes out and pupates. Some of them are flies and some of them are moths. Most of the leaf miners that we deal with in our gardens are from flies, and that means they're little maggoty maggots crawling around inside our leaves, and that's exactly as gross as it sounds. The adult will lay its eggs on the underside of a leaf or on the stem of the plant, whatever its host plant is, and whatever species it is going to determine where those eggs go. Usually for us gardeners, it's on the leaves. Then the larvae hatch out of those eggs, burrow inside the leaves, and spend the rest of that part of their lives in between the outer two walls of the leaf, protected from the elements and their natural predators and your insecticides. Once it's finished eating your plants and maturing enough to move on to the next part of its life cycle, it will cut its way back out of the leaf, drop to the ground beneath your plants, and burrow just a couple centimeters down. At that point, it pupates, emerges as an adult, and begins the cycle over again. Because there are so many species of leaf miners, there are actually a ton of host plants. But the host plants that are of particular concern for us here in the garden are leafy greens, including beets and Swiss chard, all of the cabbages, all of the lettuces, onions, which kind of surprised me, and peas. Beginning in May, you can start observing your host plants for the presence of eggs. As you find the eggs, squish them. If you're not sure, squish them. Unless you know for a fact that that's a beneficial insect's eggs, because trust me, you do not want leaf miners in your crops. If you find leaves that have been affected by leaf miner damage already, you can just remove that whole leaf from your plant and put it somewhere where it's far away from your plant, preferably in the garbage. That will at least break the cycle for that particular leaf miner larva. In most cases, just patrolling for eggs and squishing them and removing effective leaves is going to be all you really have to do to control your leaf miner infestation. But in a really bad infestation like I had in my old garden, it's not going to be enough, and I just ended up feeling helpless and losing my whole crop. The larvae are protected from insecticides by the leaf tissue itself, so you can't treat leaf miners with anything. I mean, theoretically, you could use a systemic insecticide that is absorbed by the plant and distributed throughout all of its tissues, but that is your food, and that would be a terrible idea. Please don't eat pesticides. This pest is a case where an ounce of prevention is worth far more than a pound of cure. Soil where leaf miner infestations have been this year can be tilled in the fall to expose the pupae to the frost and prevent them from overwintering and reemerging next year. Because they are such shallow pupators, this is actually a strategy that can work really, really well. You also want to rotate your crops so that your host plants are not present right where your pest is going to be emerging. Because they are flies and moths, they are very mobile, but I assure you that will help. In combination with crop rotation, I strongly recommend row cover. So any kind of insect netting or horticultural fleece over your crop before leaf miners have a chance to discover it and lay eggs on it is going to be, in extreme cases, the only way you're going to get that crop. At my old garden, I went from a year of complete loss of my beet crop to a bountiful beet harvest because, well, I moved to another plot so that I was away from those gestating pupae. And then I planted my beets, and immediately as soon as they were planted, I put insect netting over the whole bed. For that whole season, I had not one leaf miner. One really important thing to keep in mind if you are relying on row cover to protect your crops is that the row cover must go up before the leaf miners are active. The adult leaf miners cannot have a chance to discover your host plants. If they do, by enclosing them after they've laid their eggs, all you've done is created an environment that is protected from predators, and your leaf miners will flourish even worse than they would have if you had done nothing. In a healthy ecosystem, natural predators may almost entirely control leaf miners. But we need to keep in mind that our gardens are not healthy ecosystems, no matter how hard we try to make them so. These are disturbed ecosystems. We're regularly digging up the soil, completely changing out the plants that are growing. There's just not going to be as much natural predator activity in our gardens as there would be in the wild. Because leaf miners are such a varied group of organisms, they've got a lot of natural predators. In the garden, we're going to see a lot of predation from ants and parasitic wasps. Parasitic wasps are maybe the most common leaf miner predator. One weird wrinkle on the pest issue: if you have aphids on your host plant, as ants investigate the aphids for nectar, they will dig out leaf miners on their way to and from gathering that honeydew from the aphids. So this is a case where aphids on your host plant might turn out to be a cure for your leaf miner problem. Ground beetles, rove beetles, things like centipedes, all of those carnivores that crawl around in our soil are going to do a lot to control pupae in the soil. They're going to eat the pupae before they can hatch out as adults and continue their life cycle. So if you can foster healthy soil, that's going to go a long way towards reducing damage from leaf miners. There are some birds that will dig leaf miners out of leaves, but at that point we're mostly talking about the caterpillars of moths. So these would mostly be leaf miners that infest trees and shrubs. So now you know everything I know about leaf miners. I have left some links to other resources if you want to go on learning down in the description of the video. What have I been doing while I've been talking to you about leaf miners? Well, it's never too late to plant garlic. It's about the end of October and I'm just getting around to planting my garlic. It's fine though. It should be just fine because it is unseasonably warm this year. So leave any additional questions you might have about leaf miners in the comments if you want to. Maybe I or one of my other subscribers will come along and answer that question for you. I do want to thank you for deciding to watch this video all the way through to the end. If you're still watching, you might as well just hit the subscribe button and the like button and ring that little bell so that you get notifications when I make new videos. Thank you so much for joining me here in my garden today. I hope you have a wonderful time, and you're on.